This video covers adding IntraVUE networks and scan ranges. Before adding scan ranges, you should have watched the video IntraVUE host placement and installation. If you have virtual LANs or VLANs, you should also have reviewed our documentation and videos on configuring VLANs. Scan ranges are managed in the System Configuration dialog. You must first log in as administrator to get to the System Configuration dialogs. Networks and scan ranges are managed on the Scanner tab. At the top is the global default SNMP community, which will be set to this value. Almost all SNMP enabled devices are shipped with public as the default, and generally you will leave this alone. Devices such as switches and routers that may use a different community can individually be configured to use a different one. The Admin Verify All Devices button provides an alternate to using the Admin Verify checkbox in each device's configuration dialog. It admin verifies all devices having an IP address. It does not verify such things as manually or automatically inserted nodes. Be sure to review the video on the benefits of admin verification for more information on this very significant IntraVUE feature. What you see in the main work area is the clean state of IntraVUE where no networks have been defined. In this video, I will demonstrate two situations: scanning where all the switches and devices are in the local subnet, and scanning where all the devices are in the local subnet and all the switches are in another subnet. Let's take the first case, scanning where all the switches and devices are in the local subnet. This is the most common case. IntraVUE Lite was developed specifically to handle this particular case. Start by selecting the Add button. The Network Add dialog appears. At the top, you can suggest a name for your network. Let's change it to Local. In IntraVUE, the top parent is the device that contains the MAC addresses for the devices in the scan range. If any of the devices to be scanned are local to the IntraVUE host, the local computer must be the top parent. The local computer is always suitable to be the top parent. Rarely, a remote router may make a better top parent when all the devices to be scanned are on the remote side of that router. Notice that the Use Local Computer is checked and there is a drop-down combo box next to it. If we select the down arrow of the combo box, you will get a list of all of the local IP addresses assigned to the host computer. Here you see that there are 3 network adapters in the host computer. The 10.1.1.169 is the subnet I want to scan, so I will select that one. If you uncheck Use Local Computer, an edit box appears and you can enter the IP address of a router. A router is the only other device that can be the top parent. If a router is used as top parent, it must be the router that owns the subnet to be scanned. Let's recheck Use Local Computer, and now let's add a scan range. A Class C subnet is automatically suggested using the IP of the top parent. Since we want all local devices, select OK to accept this choice. And now we see it's accepted our first scan range. Also notice that the Edit and Delete buttons are now enabled. What if you have a 64-node license and there are over 100 nodes that might be discovered? We must reduce the number of potential devices to be scanned. Let's go back and edit this scan range. If you know all the switches have IPs ending in the 240s, and the devices you need to scan are all numbered between 100 and 150, you can create 2 scan ranges. Let's edit this scan range and change the 0 to 100 and the 255 to 150. And now we add another scan range to get the switches, changing the 0 to a 240 and the 255 to a 249. And now we have the devices we want to scan plus the switches. You must also include the top parent in any scan ranges. If we say OK at this point, we will get a warning message that the top parent is not in the scan range. Let's go back and edit that. So we'll add another scan range, change the 0 to be 169, we'll change the 255 to be 169. And now we have an IP range of one device. And let's say OK. Now we are scanning the local subnet. We're scanning less than all of the available devices. And we can say apply and close. And we can see devices start to be discovered. Now let's cover the second case where all the switches are in a different subnet. Let's get back into the system configuration. Let's go to the Scanner tab. You might think you could delete this local subnet, and you can. And now all these devices have been removed from the scan range. But this only removes the devices from being actively scanned. Devices that are already discovered are still in the database and still have events. If we really want to start over, we need to go to the Database tab and use the Clear Database button. And this will stop the scanner and clear the database to defaults. Do we want to continue? Yes. And now we go back to the scanner. On the Scanner tab, it looks like the initial state. Let's add a network. This will be the local network and switches. Again, we're going to use the local computer as a top parent, and we want to scan all of the local devices, so we say OK. And now we want to scan the switches, which are in a different subnet. In this case, the switches are in the 10.2.2 network. So we change this to, as I tab, notice that the 2 below becomes a 2, and I tab here, so we have the 10.2.2 network. We now have 2 scan ranges in 2 different subnets defined. In order for remote devices to be placed by IntraVUE, the last router leading to those devices must be in the scan range, and you must use the device configure dialog to set the SNMP read-only community for that device. In this case, I know it's the 10.1.1.1 of the local subnet is the router that leads to the 10.2.2. You can verify your situation by opening a DOS command prompt. In the command prompt, type traceroute, which is TRACERT, and the IP address of a device to check its path. Let's check the 10.2.2.249. And here we see we pass through the 10.1.1.230 to the 10.1.1.1 is the router, and we get to the 10.2.2.49. The 10.1.1.1 is in the scan range, so we're OK. In order to place the switches in a different subnet, you will have to know the SNMP community of the router. If you don't have access to this information, there is an alternative. Add an additional Ethernet network adapter to the IntraVUE host computer. Give the new adapter an IP address in the subnet of the switches. The IntraVUE host computer will now be able to get the MAC information from its local ARP cache, and the devices will appear in their correct places without having access to the router's SNMP data. This concludes the Adding Scan Ranges video.